The next departmental report, I'll ask Ms. Surratt to come back up to the podium. And on your consent agenda, which you have postponed until after public comment, is a budget amendment. And there's several components to that budget amendment, but specifically Ms. Surratt is going to address one budget amendment, which is requesting capital reserve parking funds and a consolidation of public services expenditures on the Union Square Pavilion project. Ms. Surratt,
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Berry, Mr. Crone. This agenda item, again, as Mr. Berry mentioned, is taking the first reading there of a budget amendment for the Union Square Pavilion projects. And so because it requires 2 readings, this is the presentation for this request. And so a little more than 4 months ago, this project was approved by the City Council to move forward. And at that time, we had a lot of information, but not all the information. We had a preliminary estimate of the cost. We had a great timetable, a very ambitious timetable, but we were optimistic. We had a design based on the initial scope of the work. And since that time, we've been meeting weekly, city staff, the designer, the contractor, as well as members of the farmers market and HDDA and other interested persons. We've been meeting on a weekly basis to go through the details of the final design, of the engineering and the construction work as it unfolded. So we had lots of discussions, and what we found was that we got the project off the ground. We met the start date strong out of the gate, and that led us to a series of meetings with the engineers that created the final structure that's going in today. And that structure is significantly more structurally complex than the original estimate and preliminary design that we had. And so from that created a series of site conditions and engineering that slowed that project down a bit. But we still feel like it's, working as fast as it can, as best as it can, and into the most detail. So with that, then this design is really, it's highly complex. It's a custom project, and much of the fabrication has had to happen on site with the steel itself. And the project really then changed scope in 4 key areas, and that's what I want to cover with you tonight. Because as the project has evolved, the scope of how it gets used and who can use it and how it can benefit the community has really broadened. It's been a very exciting process. Now, it has challenges as you go through the details, and I want to go through those with you. So the structure became more substantial due to the loads created with the thickness of the steel poles, the span of the sails, things like that. That changed one part of the scope of the project. We didn't know that before. When we presented it to you, we were working off of an estimate for the preliminary design and what it would do. And then you get into final engineering, and you have to make sure that that structure is the best it can be for the loads that it needs to carry. So that's a change in the scope. Also, as we got into this project a little more, we thought about the multi-use of this space, not just for a farmer's market, not just for casual use sitting underneath, but what this replaces a stage, a portable stage that has had great useful life, but with the formal space that we're creating, a formal stage that has the right lighting, that has the right electrical, that has the right seating area, really needed to be thought through in detail. And so that has changed the cost of the project and the scope. The third item is the lighting specifically, and I want to just emphasize this, that originally it was thought that this space would be used mostly during the day. It hadn't been conceived that it would be used in the evening for concerts or events. And the lighting was not thought through in that early stage back in December. So that was a cost that changed because of the scope of the project changing. And so several things happened with that. You need to think about the safety of that space at night, and also just the ambiance created when you do have people out there and when you have performances. And so each of those poles has conduit now in the poles, up the poles, across the poles, underground, and that is a change in the scope of that project. And then finally, there, in the original discussions and in the thought, outdoor seating was not yet factored into that. And so that's another addition that's listed there for you to think about. And so I wanted to take this quick moment just to say how proud I am of the public services staff that have worked out there, tremendously detailed work that they had to do. And you know, that space, that area has almost 100-year-old utilities underneath it. So we ran into some issues which added to the cost with utilities, with electric and sewer. And so we had to redesign some foundations, and we had to dig holes deeper and make foundation areas smaller in some cases and go deeper as opposed to wider and shallower, and that added to the cost. And so finally, then in an effort to offset any costs that we could incur, we wanted to be sure that our city staff could do as much as possible to improve the space and do it in a way that complements the rest of the schedule. And so our city crews have worked significantly on the landscaping, on the sprinkler system redesign, a lot of the things that we take for granted out on that in Union Square. A lot is underground, and that needed to all be reworked. Brick paver removal, concrete work on the stage and seating area. So where we could add value, we have done that. And then thinking about the security of that space, we needed to relocate security cameras, and that was an expense. We needed to refurbish the cannon, and that was an expense. Those are all projects that might have happened in a different time period, in a different line item in the normal operating budget, but we felt like we needed to capture all of that at one point and just be real upfront about this is an existing urban space, and it really has some challenges that we weren't quite prepared for, but we also want to do it right. I think you have city crews that really are out there making that happen in the best manner because it's our front porch. And so with that, I just want to say in summary then that, you know, the request is in front of you, and it has a total amount for the budget of $137,940, and so that's coming as a request from the parking fund to the project budget, and I'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
Well, I think it's very important we be exceedingly careful. Just this week, a tent outside a baseball stadium collapsed and killed one and injured, I think, 7 others, some seriously. So these are serious things, and of course, in my line of business, I understand the kind of thickness of walls and the depth and breadth of foundations. Thank you, Ms. Surratt.
Thank you.
Do we have any appointments? I want to appoint Dr. Kenneth Humphreys to the International Council.
Mr. Mayor, do we need a motion and discussion on this direction?
Well, if you can, first, we got to go through the first reading first, right?
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm back. Okay, good, thanks.
I think, yeah.
Excuse me.
Then, no, I want somebody to remind me, you got to go back and perhaps look at this again. Any other appointments?